Hi, it's Sam, aka LymphomaLass here, and today's video is all about printing with cardboard, a technique called collograph. So I've made this cardboard block using drinking straws, paper drinking straws, and I'm going to print with it using acrylic paint. So I'm just going to clear this up and show you how to start. So the first thing to start with is the greetings card blank you want to use. And I use greetings card blanks in a kit form that include an envelope, because getting the envelopes later can be a nuisance. But I'm not going to print on the card, I'm going to print on tissue paper. And the first thing is to get the size of your block and your tissue paper such that it can actually go on the greetings card. And then later, when you've done your printing and it's all dry, you can stick it on using a solid glue stick like this one. I've actually shown you in a different video, the video hammering eco prints, how to do that. So I'm not going to show you that again because my prints won't be dry enough for a start, and because I've already shown you how to do that. But it's fairly simple. You just make sure you've centered your print using a ruler. Just make sure you center it both ways once you've finished, and use your Pritt Stick on the back of the print and stick it down, holding it in place with a bit of kitchen towel or another piece of paper, just so that it's nicely smoothed without smudging. Okay, so I can put my greetings card away, and I'm going to start by showing you how we make the blocks. So to make this block, I found a glass in my kitchen cupboards that was about the right size for the card here. And what I just did is I got some old cardboard packaging. I put the cup or the glass on it, and I just drew around it with a pen. Now, before I did anything else, what you need to do is find the middle and mark it. So I'm going to use centimetres here, so it's not quite 10 centimetres, but I've just left a tiny millimetre over each side, and I'm just going to mark at 5, and then I'm going to turn it round, do the same again, not quite centimetres, a millimetre, and mark it at 5, and that's about my centre. So I've actually, for this project, because it's a snowflake, snowflakes have 6 prongs. So I'm going to draw a centre line to work from in dashes, because I'm not going to, that's not going to be one of, actually that is going to be one of my prongs. So I'm just going to draw a centre line. Then I need to work out on each side the other 2 lines, and I found that this is on this little mathematic tool. I found that it's, the name of which escapes me for this moment, I found that basically it's at 60 degrees, and then at 120 degrees. So I'm drawing those, and then putting this on the line, as you can see, at the centre. It's another 60 degrees and 120 degrees. Now I'm doing this before I cut out my circle because it's going to be easier to match my dots up outside the circle and draw my lines. So these are going to be my guidelines for the snowflake points. And then I just cut out my circle with a strong pair of scissors, being careful as I can to just about keep to the circle. I find for this it's best to turn the cardboard rather than the scissors. This doesn't have to be perfect, but in another minute you are going to have to get your cuts pretty perfect. There we go. Just about. That'll do. Now, to make the block for printing, I'm going to use paper drinking straws. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark them in centimetres. So I've got this at the right point on my ruler, and I'm just going to mark off the centimetres. And I'm going to go the whole way down to do that. I've got one I've already done this for, to save us a bit of time. So all I do is I cut off as level as I can at each centimetre. And why this is important is when I'm printing it, I want these to be within reason, as near the top to each other as they can be. Now these tend to squash a bit as they cut from the force of the scissors, so I just squeeze them open again with my fingers and I drop them in a little takeaway tub, clean takeaway tub that I've saved for that purpose. So I've already done all these little tubes, so I'm just going to show you how to make the block. So you make the block with PVA glue. I've got mine in a barbecue sauce dispenser, and you squidge on a good amount of PVA glue. And then what you do is you put one in the very middle, and you put one next to it on each of the 6 outward lines from the centre. And they help you position it. So you just keep doing that round. Make sure they're all upright, and then you keep adding to it and adding the glue going outwards. Once you've completed your design like I did here, you then use a paintbrush and you basically carefully flip the glue up the sides and paint all round. So you can see this one's, I don't know if you can see it, but this one's a bit glossy. Yeah, that's it. And that's the glue as it's dried. So this took quite a long time to dry, and I'm talking days, because I put lots of glue on it to reinforce the block, except for the ends, which I want to catch the paint when I'm printing, and I let it fully dry so it's stable. So this one needs to go to a side to dry. So once you've got your block and you've painted all through here and up there to secure all the bits, and you've let it dry, then you need some tissue paper to print on. So again, your trusty tissue paper and your trusty glass come into play. So what I've got here is I've just got some very standard tissue paper that I've bought for wrapping presents, and it comes folded, and I found the creases actually left enough room for me to cut circles out. So I start with my glass, and again I just carefully draw round the glass and there I am. And it's on several layers of tissue paper. Now to cut this, I need to hold it, because I'm cutting through lots and lots of layers. This is going to save me a lot of time. And to try and get a neat edge, you can see that I'm holding the tissue paper together and I'm turning the tissue paper, not the scissors, to get a neater edge. trying to get a neater edge. So, I've got my tissue papers. They're not perfect, but they're not bad. And these are for handprints, which always are a little bit more less perfect. In fact, the imperfections adds to their charm. So I've got my block, I've got my tissue paper. So now comes the exciting bit. We can print. And I've decided in advance on colours to use. So I'm going to use a dark blue to sharpen tissue paper, a white and a silver. And all I'm going to do to print is I'm going to start by painting the block, these sticky up bits of the block. So let's start in white. Put a bit of white on my lid top that I've saved, and I'm just going to paint over all the little circles. Just put some more white in. Now this is great to do with any acrylic paint you have. They don't need to be the greatest because you're not making museum quality art, you're just making greetings cards, ephemera. So this is great if you've got student grade paints that you don't use anymore because you've graduated up to higher grade paints. It's a great way to use them up. Always underestimate how much paint this takes. It's actually, the cardboard kind of soaks it up and it goes down the circles, so it's you don't need it to be very exact. In fact, it's quite charming when it isn't very exact. And basically, if your print doesn't turn out right first time, you've lost a little bit of tissue paper, so you've not exactly lost a lot. I've done this before with hearts. It works best with simple shapes, relatively simple shapes, because obviously the straws, the circumference of them limits how much you can do. Okay. I'll just wipe off my brush so I can use it for the next colour in a minute. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these tissue papers Now there's usually two sides to tissue paper. There's the shiny side and the matte side. And I want to print on the shiny side, and I've got to get it about level. And then to print, I just press in the tissue paper in to the straws covered with paint. And then, I think you're all pressed in now. I'm going to lift it off and see what we get. And there we've printed our first snowflake. So I'm just going to do another one, because once you've done one, there's quite a nice effect you get. Just getting rid of some paint with my fingers. I'm going to do the next one in the blue. And what I find with this is the white is still there, and adds a bit of a, quite often adds a bit of a two-tone effect if you then put another colour over it. And as I'm sure you can see, it's best to work with contrasting colours after each other, because you can see where you've painted and where you haven't. Just going to use a little bit more blue. Now this one I've already done. If you decide you want it to be a bit clearer, you can always use a white pen to go around some of the circles. In fact, any colour pen. So. I think I've got enough. I think I've got enough paint on it. And again, I'm going to use the shiny side rather than the matte side of, I've already got that one dirty, so I'm going to use another one. Use the shiny side rather than the matte side, lay it down, press it in, come to see which ones are slightly less elevated, slightly lower than other straws as you press them in. So those ones are a bit lower, you just need to press into just a little bit more just to make sure that they are depositing their acrylic paint onto your block. So that looks like it's printed, doesn't it? It's easier with darker colours to see. Maybe a tiny bit more there. This is one there which is a bit depressed. And there you are, that's my second snowflake. So just to show you how to do this printing with cardboard, I think it's quite a nice technique, and it would be quite fun if you're just making a few Christmas cards, if you're not having to make many, and you have a little Happy Christmas sign at the bottom. It might be quite pleasant as a craft for Christmas. So I'm doing this now in October so that you've got this ready for November, because if you decide to go into mass production, you'll have to make a lot of Christmas cards. Okay, so I'll say bye for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this, and please feel free, if you did, to sign up to my YouTube channel. Thanks again, and bye for now.